Welcome back to another Wordslinger podcast. I'm glad you're here because you're not going to want to miss this one with JD Barker. We're talking about side hustles, ways to kind of earn some money on the side while you're waiting for your author business or whatever it is to take off. Stick around. You don't want to miss it.
It's the Wordslinger podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Well, I am Kevin Tomlinson. I'm happy to be here with you. I have a confession to make. This is round 2 of recording this episode. If you want to talk about existential pain, there is nothing quite like giving what you think is one of your best performances, one of your most impassioned speeches, and something that you think, you believe is going to be so very helpful to people, and then discover that you recorded nothing but silence. I don't know why. Everything is on and working. You can hear me now, right? Tap, tap, tap. I got a little sound meter this time, so I think I'm good. There is something really frustrating about that kind of thing. I'm just heartbreaking about that kind of thing. I remember back in my copywriter days at an ad agency, there was a girl who worked across from me, the cubicle facing mine. And there was some glitch, and she lost everything she'd been working on that day, a very challenging piece that she'd been working on. And she was just in tears. No way to recover it. Just had to start over again and just really broke down over it. And I understand that. I really do. I understood it then, but I truly understand it today. This isn't the first time that's happened to me. You would think, but by now it would just be habitual to check and make sure I'm getting a meter to record. But that's the way things go sometimes. Anyway, welcome to the Wordslinger podcast. So this week, man, I've had JD on the show before. This time, I'm really glad to have him. We're talking about something that's kind of a touchy subject, which is money. But it goes beyond that. We're kind of diving into sort of, we're going to call it side hustle. We really talked a great deal about real estate investment because that was something I brought up last week. My wife and I are starting to kind of get into that. We haven't taken like all the first steps yet. She went and got a real estate license, which she really didn't need in order for us to be real estate investors, but it gives her an insight into the industry, and it's something she's always wanted. Anyway, for now, one thing I didn't have to re-record is this interview with JD Barker. So tune in and see you on the other side. Well, here we are again. So this guest is somebody that we've had him on the show before. Hopefully listen to us every week on the Writers Inc. podcast. I'm talking to my good friend JD Barker, and I can't wait to get into this one, JD, because you're an expert on something that all of us want to know more about. So welcome to the show again, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I was listening to one of your episodes. It was a couple back, and you started talking about just the finances of being an author and side hustles and things like that. And it was one of those deals where I had my headphones on and I wanted to weigh in, like I wanted to call into the radio show, and there's no way to call in on a podcast. Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is something that's just very close to my heart because, we were talking a little bit before the show started, and I'm going to go into, some background stuff here because I don't really talk about a lot of this stuff, at least not on Writers Inc. But I am a millionaire for the third time in my life. The first time I did it in the music business, the second time I did it in finance, and now I've done it as a writer. And I really feel, first of all, doing it the first time is always the hardest, because once you kind of have certain things in place and you understand how they work, it's that much easier to, have money, to make money, use money to, have money to create more. it's not something that's talked about. My parents were not wealthy. My dad was a contractor. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She basically did the books for my dad. So I had no education in this growing up. But when I started in the music business, I basically had an eye opener. I worked with a lot of recording artists that did really well. Because they were basically on tour by the time I got them. But in many cases, like they were like a one-hit wonder. So they had one song that did really great, and then they just fizzled and died and disappeared. And I saw the same pattern happen all over and over again. They would get that one hit, the money would start coming in, they'd buy a nice car, they'd buy a house, they'd buy this, they'd buy that, they go on these crazy, vacations, and more or less work as if that paycheck was going to just continue, like that money was just going to keep rolling in. And it never did. I saw so
Yeah.
many of these people that then flounder. All of a sudden the car would disappear and get replaced with something that was just a little bit more economical, or they didn't have a car at all anymore. The house they were leasing or bought got sold or went, by the wayside. But that gave me a big eye opener. I ended up making my money in that industry as a concert promoter. I basically started renting out venues. The first one I did a battle of the bands. I basically went into a club, that was completely dead on a Monday, but it had a huge stage. And I was like, I could fill this place for you on a Monday if you let me take the door and you collect the bar. And
Yeah.
it was that simple. Then I went out to a couple bands. I got 6 different bands that were willing to play for free. Got a local music store to sponsor the prizes. And I ended up packing the place. And like that night, I made a little over $60,000. And then I just kind of, snowballed that. But one of the things that I've learned over the years, and I really picked up on this when I worked in the finance industry, is, everybody, money is very difficult to make. And very difficult to hold on to. And when you do get it, you need to find some way to hold on to it. You need to squirrel it away a little bit. I see people in this industry as as authors, kind of falling into that same boat that I saw in the music business. They have a book that starts doing well. They start collecting, whether it's royalties, advances, money coming in from Amazon, whatever it is. That money goes directly into their checking account. They use it to pay bills, and then it's gone. So like they have to depend on that next book for that money to continue.
Yeah.
um you know I, that's tricky business because you never know how it's going to play out. In my world, I take a very large percentage of that money and I put it off into other things, whether it's real estate, it's investments, it's something else, something that's going to generate passive income. um I've been rambling for a little bit, so I don't know if you have any questions at this point,
No,
but
these are my favorite kind of interviews where I don't have to do much. I just let you. So
just let me rattle.
yeah, that's that. So you said passive income, and that's something we hear about a lot. I don't know if authors hear it as much as those of us who pay attention to like entrepreneurs and that sort of thing. But passive income and multiple sources of income, that sort of thing. Uh, that is good advice. But I like, where do you start with that? Like, most of us didn't start in the music industry or finance or something.
No, and here's the thing, like after the music business, I became a millionaire. I was a millionaire by the time I was 19. I got
Yeah.
in a motorcycle accident and I lost it all. I was
Mm,
basically flat broke by the time I got out of the hospital. It took 2 years for recovery. The finance industry, I did well there, but then I got divorced. Divorce is
yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
So I basically had to start over again. I'm gonna kind of go into my journey as a writer because I think that kind of lays out, because at that point, I had a good handle on how to do this. My second wife, who is fantastic, is a daredevil. She's willing to take some chances. So we've talked about this before, and I've talked about it in interviews. But I was basically, before becoming a full-time writer, my last real job, I was a chief compliance officer at a brokerage firm. It's a horrible job. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. The problem with it, though, is it pays really well. So you kind of get trapped. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where I was at. We had a big house in Florida. We had cars. We had a boat. But that's an expensive lifestyle. Our lifestyle basically cost $10,000 to $12,000 a month. So I couldn't just walk away from that and become a writer. We had to do something very drastic. And my wife came up with this plan. She said, okay, let's sell everything that we own, buy a duplex somewhere, and rent out one side, live in the other side, get our expenses down to absolutely nothing, and then try to make the writer thing work. Now that's easier said than done because it's, if you look at, just a quick look around your house, like how many people are actually willing to do that, sell
Right.
everything that they own and pull the trigger like that. But that was a drastic move, and it was something I felt we had to do. Um, Now, it's not as difficult as people think if you're willing to get past the scare factor. Buying a rental property, I think the first house that we bought, we paid $60,000 for there. That was the price tag on it. We put one third down. We put $20,000 down, which isn't a large amount of money. I think a lot of people could get $20,000 together, but that was a third. Like you technically only have to do 10% down on a property. And there's tons of podcasts that can help you with real estate investment. Bigger Pockets is probably one of my favorites. It taught us a lot. I'm going to stop here and just say, like, we are not giving financial advice, like the disclaimer,
Yeah.
like speak to an actual professional if you want to try any of these things.
Yeah.
Just because it worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Please
I
don't
just want to
use
give
me for financial advice. Please don't do
Yeah,
that.
that's not what we're here for. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what can be done. So a lot of times though, when I tell that little bit of the story, people will tell me, well, like I even if I do all that, I don't think I would have $20,000 to be able to put down on a piece of real estate. I wouldn't have $10,000. I wouldn't have 12 or whatever the number might be. There are ways around that because if you're buying a rental property, you're essentially starting a business. You can walk into a bank anywhere in the US and take out a small business loan.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they have to give it to you. And those loans start at $20,000. They're government backed. The interest rates are decent. But buying a rental property will qualify for that. And again, talk to a professional about it. They can help you structure it. So even if you don't have it, the fact that you're willing to do that and you're buying an asset, something that's going to actually create income for you, the bank will work with you to get that done. So we basically did that. We bought that property. Then we ended up selling that property at a profit. When we moved in there, I was basically working on the books during the daytime, and then in our spare time, we were renovating the place. We were gutting the bathroom, we were gutting the kitchen, we were pulling up the carpets, we were putting new floors in. All things that most people are capable of doing if you're willing to get a little dirty. Within about, I think it was about 8 months or so in, we, basically had finished the renovation on that house, and we put it back on the market and we sold it and we made a $60,000 profit. So if you go back to what I just said, I mean, you could technically do this with nothing down. You could walk into a bank, take out a small business loan, use that money as your down payment to buy the rental property. If you buy a duplex, you do the same thing that I did. You rent out the other side. That rent will cover your mortgage payment, possibly your utilities, get your expenses down to next to nothing. If you renovate that property, you can, in most markets, you can flip it. The sweat equity that you put in, will pay off.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing that with a couple of different properties. But that was basically how we started out.
Yeah. Is rent it's in the duplex scenario, were you renting the properties or were you selling each unit individually, or how'd you handle that?
No, that very first one, it was a duplex. It was basically a up and top and bottom. So the
Yeah.
bottom floor we rented to somebody. They had that first floor. We were on the second floor, so it was two different apartments. We've also had side by sides, where it's two doors. We've had triplexes and plexes. We had an apartment building at one time in Pittsburgh. We basically just kept rolling it. We would buy one, we would fix it up, we would sell it, then use that money to buy something a little bigger. I mean, we've all played Monopoly. I mean, it's
Yeah.
basically real life Monopoly. But all of that was happening with money that we kind of generated on the side. Along with that, like when the money came in, started to come in on the writing side, we put that directly into real estate too. We didn't let any of it go just into a checking account.
Yeah.
That money went right back into an account where we could use it to buy more properties. At one point, we had 8 different houses that we were renovating all at the same time. And all told, by the time we left Pittsburgh, and we were only there for maybe 2.5, 3 years, we had flipped 59 houses.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Um, but it again, it started with nothing, so this is
Yeah.
something anybody could do, but you have to be willing to to pull the band-aid off and deal with a little pain at the beginning, because
Yeah.
it gets easier as you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, one of the reasons why we did so many is because it was more difficult to find contractors than it was to find another house. So you finish up with plumbing on one house, you don't want to lose your plumber, you don't want to lose your contractor, your electrician. It's easier to buy another house and throw them into that one,
Yeah.
and just keep going, one after the other.
Yeah, there you never know what the challenge is going to be because like right now here in Texas, because of Hurricane Beryl coming in along the Gulf Coast, like if you need your roof replaced, you're kind of out of luck for a long time because there's no one available to do that. So if you're
Yeah.
buying a house to renovate and flip, that these are the things you're going to have to consider. Is like how long is it going to take to even get that work done? And a lot of times you can't even get a loan unless you've got a roof under a certain age, and there's a whole lot of challenges there.
Well, that's one of the other things you have to look at. Like we didn't end up in Pittsburgh by accident. My
Yeah,
wife researched that and she realized that that was a really strong market. You could buy houses for next to nothing and you could renovate them and flip them.
yeah,
We tried to find a way to make it work in Florida, close to where we were already living. But that market was just too saturated. It just wasn't possible there. And there's plenty of these pockets around the country. I mean, Detroit is still a fantastic place to buy houses. Like there are literally houses in Detroit you can buy for $1 from the city.
yeah,
And they'll work with you to renovate them. I know people that have bought the entire block, bought 5 or 6 houses just all at the same time, and they're renovating them all at once.
yeah,
Um, and there's pockets like that all over the country.
yeah, yeah. The challenge though is like once you've renovated that in Detroit, like finding somebody one willing to live there and two capable of living in it now that it's upgraded. So those are question marks.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely
Yeah,
the,
yeah,
there's some sketchy parts too. I mean, you definitely have to check everything out.
yeah. So all right, so my wife Kara has she's gotten her real estate license. She's doing a lot. Everybody listening, by the way, in the Texas in the Austin area, she's learning a lot about this. I'm sort of learning vicariously through her. But what is the just on the real estate side, because we'll talk about some other stuff, but just on the real estate side, like what is the actual starting point? Like what's the first thing to look for? You find the right area or what how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it can be done now just over the internet.
Yeah,
Like podcasts like Bigger Pockets is a great place to get started because they'll teach you the various techniques, in the entire business from start to finish. They will talk about what markets are hot, which ones are dying off, to give you an idea of where to focus. Zillow is a, insanely useful app when it comes to this because, you zero in on a particular place and you plug in Detroit, or a certain zip code or whatever, and it'll start showing you the houses as they pop up on the market to give you an idea of what is available. So that's kind of where you get started, I think, with something like that.
yeah. That's now what we're learning is that like you don't necessarily need any. I think you've already mentioned this, but like you don't need any money per se because you can do things like an asset-based loan, and you're going to provide them with like what the value of the property is going to be after it's renovated. You might not even have to make a payment if you do it just right. Is that
Yeah.
go ahead?
That yeah, no, that's 100% true. And like I started off by saying, like my parents basically weren't wealthy. I learned a lot of this basically working at that brokerage firm because I was surrounded by wealthy people. And
Yeah,
one of the things that I quickly learned is like these parents, they pass this information on to their kids and their kids pass it on to their kids. And like that particular group, like they not only are they wealthy now, they stay wealthy and they get wealthier because they're passing on this knowledge. It kills me that this kind of thing isn't taught in school.
yeah,
Like they basically teach us the opposite. They teach us to, go to college, get a degree, get a job, basically working for somebody else, get a mortgage, get a car with a car loan, like, and a lot of that, depending on who you ask, like that's, they want you to be kind of under their thumb a little bit. If you've
yeah,
got a mortgage, you've got a car payment, you've got these things, in a lot of ways you're controllable, but they're, and if you ask the wrong person or the right person, however you want to look at it, they will tell you like that's the ultimate end game there. But what I learned in just basically eavesdropping on the people that kind of had this game figured out is they can make money using other people's money. Like,
yeah,
they don't like they can start with zero. It doesn't and work from there. Like they will go out of their way to not touch their own assets and get this to work through, the banks or, loans or through investment groups or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I know for me that I've had enough bad experiences though that it kind of always makes me hesitant to try these things because I'm like, where's the scam? Where am I going to get taken advantage of? Like, how do I vet that?
Well, yeah, I mean things can go bad and they can go sideways. So to give you an example, when COVID hit, my wife and I we owned a ton of rental properties at that point, and they were monthly rentals. People just paying us month to month. They were on yearly leases or 6 month leases or whatever. COVID hit and rent all of a sudden became optional.
Yeah.
People decided they didn't have to pay rent anymore. Now the problem with that is if you're the owner of the property, you still have a mortgage to pay because you typically don't own rental properties for cash. You're told or the best option is to mortgage them. Basically so that you're again using other people's money to finance that. So every rental property we had some type of mortgage on it. All of a sudden, people aren't paying rent anymore. We still had to make those mortgage payments, which meant we had to start dipping into our savings to do it. And that got really scary for a while there. Obviously, something like COVID doesn't happen very often. We may not see something like that again in our lifetime. But it made us rethink a lot. And my wife actually sold a lot of those rental properties and bought short-term rentals, so Airbnbs and VRBOs,
Yeah.
houses that people just rent for a couple of days at a time, and we can that price fluctuates day to day. But it's a lot easier business to manage, and honestly, it's even more profitable than the month-to-month rentals were. So that's kind of where we're at now. I think she's got 12 of those right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. We're looking at, and we've got some friends who are purchasing a sort of RV storage place. And looking into that, I'm realizing like that's probably a very good investment, especially for around here. There's the real estate part of it that can be kind of a nightmare if you do it wrong. But the idea is like you've got all these, slots that someone can just park something on and that's it. The maintenance is making sure nobody's breaking into the place and making sure that, if it's power or whatever, everything's there. It's like that's a great option. Do you do anything like that outside of real estate?
She's been looking at a lot of that kind of thing lately. Storage units. It's like she's been all
Yeah.
over, that. Because again, that's, like you just mentioned, it's very low maintenance, very few things that can go wrong. Um, what else is she looking at? She's heavily looking at med spas right now. Because people are, drugs like Ozempic and things like that. Like
Yeah.
there's places that people can go specific to that for whether it's weight loss or health management. There's med spas for that. So she's looking at that. And that's more or less just diversifying the portfolio. With any type of investment, you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. You want to spread it out over, different things. The more diversified you are, if something goes wrong with one industry, it's less likely to impact you on the whole.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where she's at right now.
When do you know that it's time to bail on one of these?
That can be tricky. It's no different than trying to figure out when to get in. Like right now, I've got my phone in front of me. I'm watching the stock market. It's up 623 points right now, mainly because they feel the Fed is going to cut interest rates. They're probably three different times, so about a quarter point each time. But those types of things are signals as far as me as an investor. Like right now, that basically tells me the bank stocks are probably someplace where I want to put some money. Because if interest rates are coming down, people are going to go out, they're going to get more loans. That means the banks are more profitable. Something as simple as a change at the White House. Like it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. Typically, when Republicans are in office, the financial stocks outperform.
Yeah.
So you want to be in them. You don't have to pick a side. You just have to understand how each side impacts the actual market. And right now, for better or worse, we're looking at a possible Trump presidency, a Republican presidency, which means that those financial stocks are probably going to do very well. And I'm sure that's priced into what we're seeing today with the market being up 600 points. So that's a way to diversify. But that to me tells me like it's time to get in. The flip side is true. Like when the Fed started upping the interest rates, like over a year or 2 years ago, whenever that all started, to me that was a signal to get out. And like these are things that you just learn over time. And the real estate market isn't that different. We've got a couple of rental properties in near Nashville, which is it's almost like Disney World if people haven't been there. There's Dollywood, there's
Yeah.
a strip of all the same attractions you would see in Orlando. And it's a huge tourist attraction. And over the years, they built a lot of cabins in those mountains, and people rented them out through Airbnb and VRBO. But the market is getting extremely saturated. It's been profitable over the last couple of years because there was a big fire that took out about 40% of the competition. But most of those houses have been rebuilt or on their way to coming back into the market. So it's getting saturated. So we're looking at getting out of that market and then looking at new markets. Galveston in Texas is a great example.
Yeah.
It's a you can do very well there with rental properties, but then you have to start looking at the downsides. There's hurricanes, there's
Yeah.
flooding, there's like when you drive through someplace like that and you notice that all the houses along the shore are new.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
typically a reason for that. So you have to factor all that stuff in.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's
but it
impossible
comes
to
down.
get insurance to cover that at this point. Like they won't cover, like, basically you're taking your risk, and you're going to have a real hard time getting insurance at anything affordable in Galveston.
Yeah. Well, these
Yeah.
these are all level 2, level 3, 5, 10 years into this whole game kind of
Yeah.
things. Like if
Yeah.
you're buying a house in Galveston, you're basically building it on the beach. You're going to build it for cash because you're not going to want to pay the insurance. And hopefully it doesn't blow over, or you do pay the insurance, and you end up rebuilding that house at some point. But those are the kind of places where you take a little bit of a gamble. Getting back to what we were initially talking about, though, for a writer who's just starting off, you just sell your first book, you just get an advance, or you self-publish it, and you start getting money coming in from Amazon. The key is just to make sure that you don't take every single dollar that comes in and drop it into your checking account.
Yeah.
And there's different ways to do that, and it's not easy. You get $1,000, let's say, that comes in, take a certain percentage, put it into an account for savings, another percentage to put it into an account for your future taxes. Break it out and just take a small piece of it and put it into your actual disposable income, into your checking account. Find some way to do that. Just squirrel away a little bit to get to the point where you can actually do something with it.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
It works great on paper until you try to do it, but you have to be willing to sacrifice, I think, to do it.
Yeah.
If you do all this stuff properly, I mean, you can, like, I literally have no debt, personally. Like, we don't
Yeah.
have a mortgage, we don't have car payments, we don't use credit cards. I have an Amex that we pay off every month. Credit is evil, which is kind of something they don't tell you about in school. But once you get caught up in that, it's very difficult to dig out from underneath it.
Yeah.
So you want to position yourself in a way where it doesn't happen. So if that means spending less, squirreling money away, I think you need to do it.
Yeah. What? You don't believe in good debt?
No, there is absolutely good debt. So like what
Yeah.
I had mentioned earlier, as far as our rental properties all have mortgages on them, that makes sense. Um, there's no reason to own more of it than you have to if you can get the bank to finance that, because that
Yeah.
allows you to pull out a certain amount of dollars and use that money towards another property. There's always good debt. That we personally loan money out. We do hard money lending.
Hmm.
So people that are building properties or that need money, I'll loan it to them. My
Yeah.
interest rate is higher than the bank, but it's less than a credit card.
Yeah.
And perfectly legal. So there are tons of different ways to do that. Money should never be sitting in an account doing nothing.
Yeah.
It should always be working for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been the challenging thing over the course of my career, and I've had ups and downs financially over the course of a lifetime. Uh, at certain points I was doing incredibly well, and then certain points I was doing just not so great. And it's hard to, when those moments come, it's pretty hard to say, look, I just got 10 grand, 20 grand for this month off of a book or something. So I'm gonna put away 9 grand of that and live off the 1,000, or whatever. Like that becomes kind of a challenge when you need that money.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've got things in place. Being autistic, like I'm very big on systems.
Yeah.
So I've got automated journals that happen at my bank. So money that comes in for me as a writer, it drops into one particular account, and then a percentage of it automatically goes into this account, another percentage goes into this account, another percentage goes into this account. So that division happens before I really get to do anything with it. It's an automated thing.
Yeah.
Um, for a lot of people, like just having access to that money makes it tempting to spend it. If it's in a checking account or it's something you can get to with a debit card, it's easy to spend. I highly advise people to take money and put it in the market, in the stock market, because it makes it that much more difficult. It's not hard, like if you've got money at Schwab, let's say, and you decide you need to buy something, you can still do it, but now there's steps involved, and that's going to cause you to pause, because if
Yeah.
you need, let's say, $10,000, now you've got to sell $10,000 of a stock. You've got to wait for that to settle, which I think still takes 3 days. I forget what their typical settlement period is, but there's a waiting period before you can actually pull that money out. So, rather than just take your debit card and buy something, now you've got to go through these couple of steps, and that's going to cause you to, basically sit back and go, well, is it worth it? Is it worthwhile to do this? So
Yeah.
make the money a little bit more difficult to get to. That works for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked as well for me over the over the years, but we're getting better at it, and hopefully, we get much better at it over the next year or so. What we're close to wrapping up, but I mean, what are some other recommendations? You have like some quickies that people could focus on?
I mean, right now, I would pay very close attention to the stock market.
Yeah.
For the reasons that I just mentioned. I mean, it looks like the selection is going in a particular way. There's not a whole lot of sure things when it comes to the stock market, but that's about as close as you can get to a sure thing. The AI stuff that's happening right now. Like if you
Yeah.
haven't, if you're in the market and you haven't bought stock in Nvidia, you probably should be. Um, there's certain things like that I would do. Do you want to discuss your situation at all? Like,
I mean, not in great detail, but I mean, right
no, I mean, I'm just,
now.
because like I know your wife's got a real estate license.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And she's so, we are interested. We are looking into doing some investing, real estate investment. We've got a couple of options going there, but we're brand new, so we're just we don't know anything. And so we're
right.
half afraid to take those risks, um, but know that that's kind of a path towards, better, sort of a more, I don't know, more wealth, a better and more stable wealth. Yeah, for the most part, what it is for us is like we got revenue coming in from books and things like that. It's just not enough yet to cover everything that we have. We have, unfortunately, a lot more debt than we should have, after years of, you know, the sort of high life living. Things kind of just cascaded when I walked from uh, the CEO role. Uh, we had about a year buffer. And so now we're at a point where we're having to kind of figure some things out and cash in some things. And so we're at a disadvantage. Not my
Yeah.
favorite. And we've been here
I've
before, but that's not
I
good.
I have too. I mean,
Yeah.
I mentioned I've made money and I've gone broke, over and
Yeah.
over and over again. It's a repeated cycle. Um, it's just I think you basically take stock, when you hit
Yeah.
that point, and try to figure out what you're at, figure out where you could possibly go. I think you do need to take some chances, in life in general when it comes to
Yeah.
finances to get ahead, because it's so much easier to play it safe. But it's hard to get ahead playing safe.
Yeah.
The banks are a great way to go, and I think a lot of people don't realize that they can actually do that. That you can find a business that you're interested in. You could go to a bank, you can get a small business loan to buy that business or get involved. A lot of people just aren't willing to do that. After you've spent so many years working for other people, like that mentality basically gets drilled into your head, and you don't realize that you could just as easily be the boss.
Yeah.
You just have to do a little bit of research and talk to the right people.
Yeah. Yeah. For me right now, it's more about finding like there's definitely things that I don't want to be involved in, don't want to do. And unfortunately, sometimes those are the fastest way to build a whole bunch of cash real fast. But I have this aversion to doing things that I think are sketchy or taking advantage of people. I've been offered plenty of things in the indie author world that I think,
Mhm.
would have put us in a very good financial situation, but I didn't feel entirely comfortable with them. Some of them were kind of sketchy. Some of them were fine, but you know, they weren't quite right for me. And some were like would have been really good money, but I didn't trust the entity that I would be involved in. And I won't do things that hurt, other people, especially other writers. So, there's where you are. Got lots of really interesting offers over the past year for things, and I've turned a lot down.
Are these like author services, that type of thing?
Some of them, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
One in particular is a just well-known scam, and I would have made a whole lot of money being involved in it, and they only wanted me for my name. And I just, I'm like, yes, I'm sorry. Like, I wasn't even sorry. I'm like, no, you absolutely are a scam. I don't want to have anything to do with you. And so that kind of hurts though when you see those numbers go by, and you're seeing that number go by and this other number over here go down. So
Yeah, you know, you're right. Like you don't want to profit off the back of somebody else. Like
right.
that's not the way to make it happen. And you see a lot of that in this industry. You know, and honestly, like when you start digging, like if you look at, and I guess this is just general advice because there's a lot of writers that listen to this show, you know, take a quick look at whoever is offering that particular service to you. If
Yeah.
you're thinking about buying a service, you know, in most cases, they're somebody who tried to be an author who just it didn't work, you know. So
Yeah.
then they just looked at, well, how can I stay in that particular business doing something else and still make some money? And you know, they'll sell themselves as an expert and this or that. And are they really? Because they weren't able to get it to work for themselves.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you got to question that. But you know, even if you are doing well, you know, like if you know as an author, you know, you don't necessarily have to branch out within the author services community. You know, like I mentioned, real estate investments. There's tons of other things that you can do. You know, buying a storage unit. You know that
Yeah.
you can make money doing that. You know, like there's so many different small businesses that you can own that have absolutely nothing to do with the writer world, that can bring in income. And I think that's one of the hurdles people have to overcome too. Like you have to kind of just look at any kind of business that you're going to get involved with just as something that can produce income for you, and forget, you
Right.
know, whether it's, you know, your industry or, you know, an industry that you've got interest in and maybe something you've never even heard of before. I was listening to a podcast the other day with my wife. We were driving back, and it was a woman who just bought a company that makes cardboard egg cartons.
Yeah.
Like she bought it and, you know, knew nothing at all about the industry, but she saw the profits that were being made, and the business went up on the market because the original owners were retiring. And she went out and she got a loan, she bought it, and it was her first business, you know, and now she's generating millions of dollars a year through that business. So,
Yeah.
you know, you have to be willing to do the work and research and find them too.
I think one of my hangups, unfortunately, is that I always books have been my life for so long, and it's like that's the only thing I think of, and it's the only thing when it comes down to starting a business, buying a business, or whatever. It's always about books, and that's still all my eggs in that particular basket. So
I honestly, I have always wanted to own a bookstore,
yeah, me
you know,
too.
and
Yeah,
you know, we've got places around here, you know, after, especially after COVID, you know, like I'm right off the coast of Portsmouth, you know, we've got tons of rental businesses there that went under. So there were storefronts everywhere. I could have easily bought my business, and every time I bring it up to my wife, you know, she basically, you know, says, okay, step back, pretend you're not an author for a second,
right,
look at the margins on a bookstore.
right.
You know, talk to a bookstore owner. You don't
Yeah,
want to own a bookstore.
I know.
So
I know.
yeah, yeah,
All
but
right.
yeah, no, sooner or later, I want to hang a Barker Books shingle on something,
I
whether
have
it's profitable or not.
I have long goal plans for Novelton books. I'm actually thinking about doing a sort of pop-up bookstore first, where I partner with all these indie authors or whoever wants to participate. I've got a little trailer. I drive to an event. I, set up a sign, sell some books. So not a heavy investment.
No, you never
So
know. And honestly, like just rolling the dice, like pulling the trigger on something like that is the hardest part.
yeah,
And you will fail 10, 20 times, before that you hit that one that actually works. But
yeah,
as long as you're willing to keep trying and you get back up and dust yourself off and try again, you'll eventually get it done.
yeah, yeah. So all right, well we're at time, man. Always good to talk to you. Where can people find you and your books and whatever else you want to push, since this is about the side hustle today?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Easiest place to find me is jdbarker.com, or weekly on Writers Inc. Podcast.
Yeah. Writers Inc. And there will be links to all that in the show notes, because that's what we do here in the professional podcasting world. All right, JD, thanks for helping us out here, man. This is a touchy topic. It causes me to sweat, so I'm sure it causes some of the listeners to sweat as well.
It causes all of us to sweat, but it's got to be done, right?
Exactly. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Stick around. We will greet you on the other side with whatever comes to mind for me. You know how I am, so I'll see you over there. Well, here we are on the other side. It's deja vu all over again for me, but I promise I'm gonna do my very best to give you some wisdom after that. And I hope that you enjoyed that interview with JD. One of the things that's challenging for us as creatives, if we're in a creative industry at all, whatever it is you're into, I'm a writer. You are likely a writer. I always encourage everybody to be writers. If you are some other sort of creative, if you're an artist, if you're a filmmaker, if you are whatever it is you're doing, the idea of a side hustle. So the real thing to focus on here is, like, we have this goal. We want to build a business of some kind. In my case, it's being an author full time again. I've had highs and lows throughout my career. I've had years where it was my best financial year ever because of the books. The books were earning more than any job I'd ever had. I've had several moments of that, and then I'll have moments where that falls, where it's not doing quite as well. And now, for many years now, I haven't had a need for a full-time job, but I had one anyway, and there's a reason for that. I was having a conversation recently with a good friend of mine who's an author. He's recently gone back to work full-time at a company. He also, we had a discussion where he said that, before he went full-time, he got more writing done. And it was sort of, he had to get up early and sort of force himself to write before he had to get ready for his day job and go to his day job. And then he would feel sort of drained by the day job, but he would still make himself do some writing, get the words on the page. But he got more writing done that way, despite feeling sort of pulled in many directions, maybe a little exhausted. And I think I know why. I think it's because we prioritize things in such a way that, when we know we have to get something done, we tend to be able to draw upon the resources to get it done. It's that must, as Tony Robbins would say. Like, you don't get what you want, you don't get what you need, you get what you must have. And so that's, in general, that's the idea. Like, you will think about a crisis. If suddenly today someone told you that unless you raised $20,000 by the end of the day, you were going to lose everything. You were going to be on the street, you're with nothing but the clothes on your back. Your family's going to be carted off somewhere, and your dog's going to be put in the pound. You've got precisely 24 hours to raise $20,000. I know that I could figure out a way to do that. It might require me to compromise some things, sell some things, beg and borrow, maybe even steal. I'm not going to be hold myself up as a paragon here, but I will say that I would find a way to raise that money. That means that I have in my potential the ability to raise that money anyway. And we see those sorts of things kind of come up in a crisis. Now, that's not an operating mode. That's not a way that we should live day to day, but it is something we should remember as we live day to day, that we always have within us the potential to do remarkable and incredible things. And I think that's part of why when you have a day job or you have something else that sort of takes your attention away from the full-time writing aspect, you are able to focus your energy and get that work done, even though you have less time to do it than you would like. There's that goldfish principle, a goldfish. I think this has been debunked as a myth, but it's a good metaphor that a goldfish will expand to fill the bowl, its environment that it lives in. There's that principle, and it's escaping me right now. It's not Paretti's principle. That's 80-20, but it's something similar that, the time it takes to do a task will expand exponentially to the amount of time you have, something along those lines. I may have butchered that pretty well. You can correct me down in the comments below if you don't mind. So the point, though, is that we'll let a task sort of expand to fill the time we have. So if we're writing full time, if all we've got in our life is that, like I've got 24 hours today, I'm going to spend 8 of them sleeping. The rest of that time I'm going to write. Well, we don't tend to do that. I know plenty of us do. I know a lot of writers who write, 8 to 10 hours a day. I've been one of those. But even at this point in my career, I'm full time as a writer, and there are days where I sort of, it's not, I don't consider it writer's block, but I will hit like an existential wall where the writing becomes more difficult. And I think it's because right now my income is a little unstable, and I'll give you the background on that. I've been hesitant to talk about this kind of thing, but I talked about it before, and it felt cathartic, and I think that it's something that would be useful to you. But it's like my story from the past year. So around this time last year, there were some incidents and things, nothing too major, no dirty laundry I'm going to go into, and it's no one's business. It's not even all that bad, but there was a spark that made me realize it was time for me to finally move on from Draft to Digital. I love Draft to Digital. I love that company. I've loved it since I started there. I worked there 7 years helping to promote and build the brand, and I think I did a great job. Others may disagree, but I don't know. People seem to remember and recognize me from D to D, so I think I've done okay. But the thing is that there's always a point at which you are you kind of reach an end. There's an end to everything, and I was really feeling like I was played out. I didn't have the energy and the passion to keep coming back to it because it's not my goal. So rather than get to, let things devolve to a point where I was only phoning it in, soaking up money for no good reason, I decided it's time for me to move on. At that point, my book income was lower than it had been, but it was still adequate to kind of let us get by. However, I had an opportunity come up with Book Sweeps, and I stepped into the role of CEO for Book Sweeps. Now, I was very vocal about what I wanted to do in that role as leader of that company, and we had agreed upon all that, and it was even in writing. But there came a point in that business and only a few months later, where it was clear that, the direction I had for the company wasn't the same as what, the leadership of that company had in mind. And so no big deal, no hard feelings. We decided that our visions were incompatible, and so we had an amicable split. But because of that, I had a nice year's worth of revenue to kind of get us by. Not as much as I could have had I stayed with the business, but enough for me to get by as part of a financial unit, which was me and my wife. However, man plans and God laughs. Only a couple of weeks after I stepped down from that role, my wife came into my office, and you can't see the door behind me now, right now, but she stepped in. I always keep my door open while I'm writing, and she stepped in and startled me because I'm very focused when I'm writing. And she let me know that she'd been let go from her role. She was a project manager for a division of Office Depot that did like furniture for corporate furniture stuff, like for schools and businesses, and she did some stuff for county offices and states and hospitals and things like that. And she was very good at her job. She had brought that company more than $10 million in that past year. But there was a conspiracy of scenarios that happened for her there. Back in 2020, she'd been working for that company for 10 years. When the pandemic hit, they were hit pretty hard, and they put a lot of people on furlough, and she was one of those. And then at the end of that furlough period, they started letting people go, and she was one of those. So she lost her seniority with the company after 10 years, which was fine because we were actually on the road at that time, full-time in the van. I brought her on at Draft Digital, and she did some work for us there. And, we had more than enough money to kind of get by. We had more than enough money to be able to put down for this house. And, we were in a good shape. That was one of the greener moments of my career and hers. And so we get into the home, and probably a few months after we were in the house, she was offered the same role with Office Depot again, and she took it because it was more in line with her skills and what she was hoping to do with her career. Unfortunately, she lost her seniority. So fast forward to back in, I think, March of this year, 2024, she was, because she was lower on the totem pole, Office Depot was having a lot of trouble. They'd had a failed acquisition attempt from, it was blocked by the SEC for Staples to acquire the company. It's pretty obvious they're having a tough time. I personally don't think Office Depot is going to be around in its current form much longer. But she was one of the first to be let go because she no longer had seniority. So, bad timing for us. So this income that I had that was going to get us through really well over a year with our combined income suddenly wasn't going to be enough. And so we only had a few months of runway left. We're at the end of that period now. My book income has been increasing, but it's not yet at a level where it could support the two of us. So we're in a stressful situation because now she's gone on to get her real estate license. It's going to be a few months before she starts to see any revenue from that because you got to sell houses. I don't know if you're aware of what the housing market is like right now, but it's challenging. But she got into that to pursue another dream. And I think this is where the side hustle idea is going to come in. And this is where I think some wisdom will come in. So here's the thing. We all want the dream to be the thing that we do and the thing that occupies our energy and time. And we feel that anything that detracts from that is unwanted and is no good. But here's what I'm coming to realize. There's that concept of quiet quitting, and your take on this may be different than mine. But I've started to realize what it actually is. And it's not about people wanting money for not doing any work. It's not about people being bums. It is strictly about people who are waking up to realize that they were hired for a specific role and that they are often being asked to do more than that role should require as an expectation of that role. And what I've realized is that there is the attitude of you should always give more than is expected of you when you are on the path to success. And here's what my realization was. The path to success changes per individual. It's not about the job you're in. If I work for McDonald's, I don't want to be the most successful McDonald's employee there is. I'm working at McDonald's to put oatmeal in my kids' bowls and to put a roof over our heads, while I hopefully am moving on to better things. If your dream is to work for McDonald's, that is amazing, and I think that is achievable. I think you can go high in that organization if you have the right attitude and you are smart about it. I don't see that happening for most McDonald's employees. Not to rag on McDonald's or McDonald's employees, but I don't see a whole lot of millionaire stories coming out of the lower ranks of McDonald's. And maybe it's just because I'm not looking. But what I do see is people who go to work for companies like that, and they put in they learn a work ethic, and they learn how to discipline themselves, and they apply those skills to something they're actually passionate about. And that is where I'm going with this. So, I'm a writer. I've worked for companies in the past in various roles. I've had a lot of different jobs besides writing. I love writing, and it's been mostly my work for most of my life. But I've worked in film and TV and radio. I've worked as a private investigator. I've been a teacher. I've been a minister. I've been, a number of things in my career. And, I can say with absolute assurance that none of those were my dream jobs, and I was never going to put 120% into any of them, because I was reserving my passion and energy for the thing that I really cared about. So the point here is there's your day job, there's the thing that you have to do to get by. The world's going to tell you that you need to, in order for you to be successful, you need to make sure you're giving 110% at that effort all the time, and always increasing that. But you're never going to be rewarded for that. They're going to tell you that this is an expectation and a demand, that you should do more than the minimum, more than what's listed on your job description in order to succeed. And they are right if your success is supposed to be in that role. When I've worked for software companies, ad agencies, all kinds of things, and I was always told the same thing, and I always believed it, that if I was going to be a success, I had to make sure I was doing far more than what was expected of me, and that was also expected of me. But I never saw reward for any of that, ever. And I'm not angry about it, I'm just realizing it. Like, I remember working for a particular ad agency, and I really kind of liked it, but the expectation was always that I was going to put in far more hours than the job was slotted to require. Agencies, as a rule, do this. Not just ad agencies, but like the game development world works on an agency model as well. There is an expectation. I was told one time by my boss that he was disappointed in me because a designer had stayed behind to work on a project until 11 o'clock that night, but I had gone home at 5. And I explained that I had also showed up at 5 the next morning and had worked until 5 or 6 o'clock that evening, and that there were plenty of evenings where I was sitting and working until 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, and I wanted to see my family, my home that I paid for. I wanted to have a meal at my house. I had a life that I wanted to have outside of the office, and I was told flat out that the expectation was that I would be there until the job was done, each day, each night, and the job being done was determined by them and not by me. And it wasn't long until I was gone from that role, and not by my choice either. I mean, they saw me as being lazy or something, and so I was let go. So that's unfortunate. And I let that hit me in the ego and make me feel like my worth was low. And now I'm starting to realize, screw them. I agreed to a job. If I have a contract with someone to do something, if I hire a roofer and I say, you will put a roof on my house and I will pay this amount of money, and he agrees to that, and then I come out and say, hey, look, I know the agreement was that you would build this roof over the next 30 days, but I need it done by tomorrow or you don't get paid. I mean, that roofer is going to laugh in my face, may even walk off the job. Why is that fine, but the expectation doesn't go the other way around? If I'm working for an ad agency or working for a software company or working for anybody else, and I decide that I need to take time to work on my real passion, which is my writing, I'm not taking it out of your time. I'm not making you pay me to write. I'm not asking for anything, but I'm just going to do the thing that I was hired to do, and then I'm going to go on with my life. There shouldn't be an expectation that I'm going to surrender the rest of my time to you. Now, I think I hit on a little bit on this with the no loyalty episode. So if you haven't seen or heard that one, go back and check that out. I'm not advocating that people shouldn't do their job. I'm advocating that they should do their job, but only do their job. do the job. And if you want to be successful in that job, go above and beyond in that job. But if your goal is something else, do that job to support what you really are passionate about. And the same goes for side hustles. You know, I have a tendency to get involved in something and then I'm 100%, 110% in. And I let that become my life. I did that with Draft to Digital. I love that company and I wanted to see it succeed, and I wanted to see the authors succeed. And so I was giving all of myself to it. And because of that, I saw my revenue and income from book sales go down, 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 down. And I started to feel it, because whether or not I want to be a full-time writer is irrelevant. I still want to be a success in that area. And when I have been a success and then start to see my key performance indicator, my KPI, start to diminish, the revenue starts to go down. Now we've got a huge problem. I start to feel depressed. I start to feel overwhelmed, burnt out, and then I can't produce the work because of those things. That's the danger for you, and I want you to avoid that, because I've been through that. I'm going through that. That's what's happening in my life right now. So, and I'm recovering. I hope I'm recovering. I think part of that recovery is I'm going to have to find the right side hustle to support me while the book income increases. Will I ever get back to a point where the book income is paying for both me and Kara to live? I think so. But it's long game. Just like the real estate thing for her is long game. So we both have to sort of compromise and we're going to have to find the side hustle, and that side hustle may be a full-time gig somewhere. For anyone considering me for future employment, I guess I may have shot myself in the foot. But I mean, maybe it's best that you know that I'm passionate. I'm going to be passionate about the work I do for somebody, but I can't allow it to be the passion. Like I'm going to do the very best I can do in a role. That's what you're hiring me for. I consider myself fairly unemployable at this point, but you know, stranger things have happened. I don't want to say that too loud, but if I do work for someone else, like they're going to get my loyalty, but they're going to get it to align, and I think that's appropriate. And I think their loyalty to me is also to align, and we already know that that's the truth. If I'm bad for the bottom line of the business, then I'm out. It doesn't matter how great a guy I am or how much they like me. And so that's the reality of where we are as creatives. If we need something to support us while we do the creative work, that something becomes our patron, like the days of old. If you are lucky enough to have, or blessed enough to have, someone willing to be your patron to support you as you create, then that's glorious. But you have responsibilities to them at that point. You need to live up to the responsibilities, but live up to them, not beyond them. I think we should all be done with living beyond. There's a concept of living beyond your means. I think the same idea applies to whatever your hustle is, side or otherwise. Talking about side hustles, I mean, this idea of like, there's all kinds of things out there that you can do. When I was in high school, I had a kid who was a friend of mine. He started a business of vending machines, and he would go and set up vending machines, sodas and chips and candy and stuff. in all these various places. And on the weekends, he'd go collect all the money and refill the machines. And he had a contract with somebody to repair them if he wasn't able to get to them, but he learned how to repair them. Sweat of his brow stuff. He also had a snow cone stand that he would set up in the summers. All summer long, as soon as the first hot day came along, he'd set up this trailer, open it up. He had a machine that ground ice. He would make his own ice. I suspect there was a garden hose involved, but maybe not. It was the 90s. Who knows? But he would make snow cones, and it was almost pure profit. And this is how he paid for school, went to school. I don't know where he ended up. I wish I did. But I feel confident that he is very successful somewhere. Entrepreneurs, man, we figure it out. So the point, though, is like there are things out there. You heard us talk about storage units, RV storage, car washes. These are businesses you can get into for relatively no money. Flipping houses is one of those, and there's ways to do that don't put you in financial jeopardy. That whole concept of other people's money, OPM, that is a real thing. JD brought that up in the interview. I've talked to some others, and that is the way to do it. And it's sort of like there's big question marks, like how do you do it? Well, you will have to do a little footwork to figure this out. But there are people out there that will, if you can come to them with the right idea and the right offer, they will fund it. And then you can profit off of it as they profit off of it. And there's nothing unethical or illegal about it. And it's just hard work and sometimes scary. And there's risk too. Don't think you can get through this without any risk. But the idea is to find some passive income. I right now, my books are the passive income, but I'm trying to flip that. And so I want that to increase to the point where it becomes the primary income, and then everything else can be passive on the back end. Like that, it's still passive in that once I create a book, I earn the money. So it's pretty good as long as there's demand for what you're creating. And there is a mild demand for what I'm creating at this point, and there's at various times been greater demand. And the thing that inspires me is that there are definitely authors who have managed to figure out how to create greater demand. And so that's proof of concept. And so one thing I want us to pay attention to, because I'm guilty of this, is stop comparing yourself to people unfavorably, and instead compare yourself to people to see where the dots aren't aligning, so that maybe you can shift and change what you're doing to get the results that they're getting. And you may not get the same result, but you can get closer to what your result should be, what you want your result to be, by paying attention to the people who are doing what you want to do. One of my side hustles is stuff like this. I'm not earning any money from Wordslinger podcast at this point. I was for a while, but what I earn from this is pretty low at this point, if anything. I think that can change if I want it to. My problem is, what I'm discovering is, as a side hustle, I'm good at podcasting and broadcasting. I'm good at video. I'm good at a lot of things. But it's the energy. So for me, it's all about energy management, and I have been a poor energy manager. So, when you are in a position where, there's financial pressure, that starts to put a time pressure on you as well. You start to feel overwhelmed. That soaks up more of your energy. It really does come down to energy management. The whole side hustle concept is, let's find something that doesn't cost you a lot of energy, but will bring you some financial stability. And the best way to do that is diversification. Find as many tiny streams as possible. So a concept I call a million little streams, because I don't have the tools to dredge up and create my own ocean or my own river or my own lake. But I definitely have the tools to create a million tiny little streams. All I need is enough flow to start, and then that will eventually come together and create a mighty river and feed into a mighty ocean, And that's where that success happens. How do I know this? I've done it before and failed. Just like you heard JD. I mean, this is his third time as a millionaire. And he's done it in different fields each time. I've had my success in different fields over the years. Depending on what it was I was putting my energy into, I would tend to succeed in that thing. Now I've been putting my energy into something, but what I've done is let things distract me from it. And I've thought over and over again that distraction was the day job. And it was to a degree, but it wasn't the day job intrinsically. It was my attitude towards that day job. It's my attitude towards that primary source of revenue. Because maybe I'm hurting myself here, but like, I won't do it again. Anything else I do that brings in, primary revenue for me, I'm no longer giving them more than what they're paying me to do. And you can call that lazy if you want. You can call it, I don't know, whatever Dave Ramsey calls it. I call it justice and fairness and being intelligent, frankly. I mean, I just call it is ultimately up to us to decide what our limits are and how far we'll go, and we will go this far and no further. I am not going to sacrifice the things that I care about and am passionate about and want to create in this world and want to use to serve this world in favor of being the very best McDonald's employee I can possibly be. I will be, well, no, let me rephrase that, because I do want to be the best I can possibly be for whatever role I'm selected for. There's a responsibility and care of duty there. I believe in that. But it's the demand that you must go above and beyond that now has me infuriated, because going above and beyond is now costing you. And I can serve in a role and serve the people that depend on that role without sacrificing my own health and prosperity and joy. And that's what I'm learning. So call me what you will. If this message offends you and you were considering me for some role in your organization, first of all, thanks for the consideration, but I don't need you. I could use the job, but I can't use enslavement. So I'm not even sure I need a job. I mean, I kind of come down on myself a lot, but when I look back, when I really analyze it, I'm like, well, I'm not doing so bad. We've been going a full year now, kind of coasting on fumes a little, but it's not like we've had to make a lot of sacrifices. We still have our house, our vehicles. There's things we could probably do to get rid of. Not as easy as it sounds, by the way. Like the van is something like it's a burden on us financially, but we can't get rid of it because it's a burden on us financially. We owe more on it than we can sell it for. So what do? Maybe there's an option. Maybe you have one. We turned it into a revenue source. Now we're going to stop doing that because every time we get it back, it's wrecked a little more. So until I can figure out a way to guarantee that doesn't happen or to compensate for that, we're no longer going to rent it. Maybe I just need to be more discerning with who I rent it to. But anyway, that's a good example though, because we've made like $8,000 by renting that van out. That was very much needed revenue at the time. So I kind of come down on myself, but maybe I'm better off than I think. And there's another lesson there. That's one that's hard for me, but to stop and assess with honesty where you are. And when I do that, I realize, I'm far better off than I thought I was. Now, I've got book revenue. We've got some revenue from another couple of little things. It'll probably be 2 or 3 months before Kara starts seeing revenue from real estate, but she's already gotten her first couple of leads, and we're finding a way through it. I think that's the point. So when it comes to side hustles, the idea is build up as many as you can that take the least amount of energy and time to manage as possible. And if you do it right, you might even be able to bring someone else in to do the managing part. That's what passive is all about. So you're going to find a lot of people who say that's a myth. I know for a fact it isn't. But really, my advice to you is, final advice here, is put the most passion and energy into the thing that matters most to you. And the rest, even if they're going to criticize you, even if they're going to try to make you feel bad about it, you put in only the effort you're being paid for. And some of you are going to disagree with that, and I understand. And you can yell at me in the comments. But that is, to me, I think you're foolish if you pour all your energy into something that isn't giving you anything back. And you can argue the paycheck, it gives you the paycheck back, but that only goes so far. You can get the paycheck with this sort of minimal effort. If the only way you can keep it is to keep giving more and more and more, then maybe it is just literally time to find a new source of revenue. And that's the reality. So I was all over the place with that one. So I hope you got something good out of it. I hope you're not mad at me, but if you are, I can't control that, but I welcome any comments in the comments below. If you are listening to this show on a podcast, I appreciate you being there. I am trying to focus everyone on the YouTube channel. So go on over to youtube.com. I think it's youtube.com/Wordslinger. I think. You know what? Live on this show, we're going to test that. I'm going to open a browser and see if that is true. So YouTube, see, do you hear the typing? .com/Wordslinger podcast. That's what it is. And that takes you to my podcast page. Looks like I need to do a little update to the banner. But you can see the past several episodes. There's a For You section that will recommend episodes kind of based on the algorithm. But then below that, you can see all the current videos, including this one. I'm starting to kind of peel off of doing as many interviews. That's what I forgot. This final thing, and I should have said this at the beginning because I did on the silent version of this that I recorded for 30 minutes. But if you are an author, one of the reasons I'm kind of tapering off on interviews here, or at least getting a little more generalized in the focus of interviews, is because JD and I do a show together along with some other wonderful authors, co-hosts. A rotating bevy at this point. But if you are an author and you want to know what's going on in the industry and hear some wisdom from some people in the publishing world, check out the Writers Inc. podcast. That's the show I do every week with JD and company. I read the news on that, so you'll get to hear my voice more if you like that sort of thing. But that's a great source for all things publishing. I think one of the better shows I've been a part of. I'm really blessed by it and grateful for it. So tune into that. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And that's going to do it. Go check out that show. I'm hoping that we don't have as much of a YouTube presence yet. Maybe I need to talk to JD and we figure something out about that. But it hasn't been a priority. But the show is available on all the podcast platforms. It's very well done. So tune into that. Thank you for tuning into this show. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you comment. Tell YouTube that this is the kind of thing you love to consume, so that others, and share it with people, because I'm trying to build the audience here. But thank you for coming on over from wherever you are, and God bless you. I know these are rough times for everybody. I'm really kind of grateful for this episode. I'm grateful for what I've learned from it, and I'm grateful for where things are going from here. So that's going to do it. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time.
Wordslinger.